All right, everybody, joining me now to give us some insight on the South Alabama Jaguars, the voice of the South Alabama Jaguars, JT Crabtree. And JT, appreciate you coming on and talk about South Alabama.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on here, man. Should be a fun one here this weekend.
It is. And, looking at it, I just got to think, I know this thing got scheduled back in 2019. So it's finally here. As in college football, you schedule things 100 years in advance and then we finally get it. But cool deal that South Alabama and Auburn playing for the first time.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. I was thinking about it the other day about when I kind of heard under wraps that this game was coming about, and I remember thinking, man, like it's a long way away, but it's cool to see it on paper that this is going to happen. And credit to Auburn for being willing to do a game like this. There's another big school in state that won't do something like this and haven't since the 30s. But I think it's great that South Alabama gets a chance to go to Auburn. We play them in pretty much everything already, everything else, every other sport. And so pretty cool to be able to have an opportunity to go to Jordan-Hare Stadium, see what we got. It's a I keep telling everybody, everyone asks me, what do you think about the game? How do you think the Jags are going to do? Oh, they're going to get blown out. Oh, do you think they'll pull off the upset? I keep reminding folks, win or lose, it does not change the fact that this is a bye game. It is a bye game for us. It's the game where the bigger school pays you a check to come to their place, and on paper they should win, but hey, you never know. You never know until you roll the ball out there. In 2016, we beat Mississippi State, and in 2023, we beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State. Both were road games, so we'll see what happens when we kick this thing off.
Hey, and Auburn has a tradition of still being asleep at these early 11:45 kickoffs
Sure, we were
over
excited
history.
about that 11:45.
Yeah, I'm sure. Every time I see an Auburn scheduled game that early, I'm like, yep, this is where they usually get upset is at 11. Hey, look, they played Jacksonville State several years ago, and I don't think they'll play them again because they went to overtime and
Sure,
almost got
yep, I
beat.
remember that game.
And then, hey, I wish they would throw UAB. And look, where I go to school, Troy, I wish they would throw them a little bit. But, I'm glad to see the South Alabama matchup. It's fun to see two in-state schools like that outside, no offense, Alabama State or Alabama
Sure.
A&M on there. 1-1 start for South Alabama, beat Morgan State in the opener, and then close loss to Tulane. Got an early lead, got down, fought back, was within a 2-point conversion of sending it to overtime. Just through these two games, what's been your overall take on the team so far?
Yeah, game one, we went in with, like everybody in the first game of the season, you go in with a lot of question marks and you wonder, who do we have on this team this year? And we knew with Tulane coming up week 2, we could try to keep it as vanilla as possible to not give anything away.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. The offense was very, very basic. And so we still went into game 2 against Tulane with a lot of the same questions we had going into game 1. Uh, and lo and behold, all we had heard about Tulane coming into that matchup was, of course, how good their defense was. At the time, they were the leaders in the group of 5 for the college football playoff at the end of the season, from ESPN's metrics at least. And so we knew that it was going to be a good team coming to town. John Summerall being the former head coach at Troy, we were familiar with him, of course. And so we knew we were in for a challenge when they were coming to us. And you mentioned it. We jump out 14-0. We were playing with our hair on fire to start the first quarter. And credit to Tulane, they didn't go away. They rattled off several unanswered points. They were up 16 with 5.5 minutes left to go. And we're kind of thinking, all right, we had a shot, couldn't hold on. But credit these Jags, man. They just kept on fighting. We score with 5.5 minutes left to make it a one possession game. Scored with a 2-point conversion to make it a one possession game. Got a 3-and-out defensively. And then with a little over 2 minutes remaining, we charged down the field, scored another touchdown. And like you said, we were a 2-point conversion away from forcing overtime. So, I was really, really encouraged from what we saw this past weekend against Tulane. Again, Tulane is a very good program. They're a very good team right now. They dominated Northwestern week 1, and I know Northwestern isn't the cream of the crop of the Big Ten, but still, ESPN was showing graphic after graphic about how Northwestern's offensive line was bigger than the Chicago Bears, and Tulane's defensive line dominated them. and we held our own against Tulane.
Mm.
And so I feel a lot better after that performance. Of course, you'd love to see a win for the Jags, but I feel good about the performance. We stayed relatively healthy through the first 2 weeks of the season, and so that's always the key is staying healthy and not turning the ball over. Now, that second part, the turnovers, is something we got to clean up before heading up to the Plains this weekend. But overall, I feel good about where this team's at after 2 weeks.
And just the overall, just the matchup playing Tulane, that just seems like a natural, could be a rivalry that you kind of wish you could see a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, two cities entrenched in Mardi Gras culture over the years. Very, very similar historical backgrounds with the French and Spanish connections between Mobile and New Orleans. And now, actually, I hadn't even thought about it until Corey Glore, the voice of the Tulane, brought it up. There's now an Amtrak line between Mobile and New Orleans, so it's only about a 3-hour train ride between the two cities. Only 2.5-hour drive, but there's a train option now to come back and forth. I would love to see us play regularly in football. I'm with you. I think that'd be great. We used to have that kind of regional rivalry with Southern Miss, and now they've joined the conference, so the rivalry has amplified for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But to have that out of conference regional game where it's an easy drive for both fan bases to come over and enjoy a football game, Tulane would be great if we could get that regularly on the schedule.
Yeah, and how about quarterback Bishop Davenport? His performance so far this year, 76% through 2 games, completion, just a tick under 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, a running threat too as well within the offense. As he's taken over this year as a start quarterback, what's been your big takeaways from him?
Yeah, he's been exciting. We saw a little bit of him last year. We saw kind of two different versions of Bishop last year, where he got to start week 2 at Ohio for an injured Gio Lopez, and we kept it pretty watered down for him. We didn't throw the whole playbook. And so he looked okay, in spite of not really being released to do 100% of what he could potentially do. We still lost that game by only one possession. And so when we got to the bowl game at the end of the season and Gio wasn't playing and Bishop was going to start, you always wonder, we've only seen this guy in one other start, and it was okay. Are we going to get that again? Because it's probably not going to get it done here in this bowl game. And we did not get that. We got something much better with Bishop at the end of last season. I mean, he looked great. The training wheels were off. He had no restrictions. He fully ran the offense. His vertical passing was great. His run game was really solid. He broke off a 50-yard touchdown in that bowl game victory. I mean, he was spectacular. And so when you go into the summer and knowing that he is the guy and he is going to be QB1 and he's not going to be necessarily battling for playing time or figuring out the offense because he's comfortable with it. He's been here now 3 years. He has been really, really impressive. And again, week 1, we kept it very vanilla. I think he maybe ran a designed run play one time against Morgan State week 1. And then week 2, this past weekend against Tulane, we had several designed QB runs. We had 3 of them on the first drive alone, including the one that capped off the drive for a touchdown. The guy likes contact. He likes physical running. He doesn't slide. He didn't slide once when he carried the football this past weekend against Tulane. He loves it, man. And his vertical passing has really come along. He doesn't have as many weapons as he's had in years past. We graduated 4 senior wide receivers last year, and so to have the guys that he does have available to him, he's able to make it work, make plays happen. And I've been really excited about what he's shown so far.
Yeah, talking about one of the receivers, Devin Voisin. I mean, he has been electric. 15 catches, 221 yards, 3 touchdowns. Big game against Tulane there. 8 catches, 152, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously he had dealt with some injuries last couple of years, but just the way he's coming out, I mean, he has been on fire this year.
Yeah, he's been great. He's been spectacular. He was the missing piece we needed because when we graduated so many receivers, we were looking at the roster last year and it's like, man, if Voisin doesn't get another year back, keep in mind he's a 7th-year player, so he got an extra year. We didn't know if he was coming back this year, and if he wasn't coming back, there was not a lot of experience returning in that position group. And so to have him back fully healthy, he played every game last year, but he was not 100%. At best, he was probably 70%. He tore his ACL week 2 of 2023 after coming off a career year in 2022. misses most of 22, comes back in 24, and just was not the same. He had put on some weights, which he had to. He had to add some bulk to his legs to protect his knee. Had to play with a knee brace, and so he was sluggish. His cuts weren't very clean. He still contributed. He didn't score a touchdown last year, but he still contributed a bit. But he wasn't the big playmaker that he was in years past. Turn the book now to 2025. He's lost the weights. He's lost the knee brace. He's comfortable with his body again. He looks like a completely different guy. His best year I mentioned was 2022. So far, he looks better than that version 3 years ago, which is really exciting. I mean, he, like you mentioned, the big game against Tulane, he made a great leaping catch to make a midair adjustment, make a defender miss, and break off a 65-yarder. He's looked really impressive. And, you know, the majority of his career, he hasn't been the big play guy. He's been the possession receiver, get us 6 yards, get to the sticks and turn around kind of guy. He's become our threat to do it all, and it's been really exciting. He's not gonna blow you away with speed off the line and just blow by you and hit a seam or hit a fade or anything like that. But the way that he moves so efficiently in zones, he knows how to find soft spots and pockets of zones and whatnot. And his route running is so clean. He can make up for what he doesn't have in his initial speed burst. And he's been really, really excited to watch through these first 2 games.
Yeah, it was clutch against Tulane. He scored a touchdown before the 2-point attempt, and then he kind of got things, started off with that 14-point lead, and then almost with the comeback there with him as well. So coming up big too for him.
Yeah, he's been great. He's going to be the big playmaker for us this year. Him, Kentrell Bullock, Bishop Davenport, Anthony Eager, those 4 guys are going to be the primary offensive weapons this season. And I mean, he deserves it, man. He's stuck around here for 7 years. It's unheard of in college football nowadays for one guy to stay at the same school for that long and for one guy to have success at that school for that long. He had some opportunities to go in the portal this past spring and said, no, I don't want to do it. I want to stay here. I can win here. I like it here. They've shown trust in me here over the years. Why would I want to go somewhere else to get more money but less of an opportunity? I love everything here. He's from down the road in Crestview, not too far from here. So his family comes to every game. And so this is home for him. And so it's we love to pump up Devin Voisin because he's the epitome of the modern student athlete in the mid-major college football era. That's for sure.
So looking ahead to South Alabama coming up to Auburn for Saturday, 11:45 on the SEC Network. Just from what you've seen from Auburn side of things, what sticks out to you about them?
Yeah, defensively, first off, is really, really special what they've done so far, especially stopping the run. And I know that, the numbers might be a little skewed because of what they did against Ball State this past weekend, but still not taking anything away from the performance. They still have to go out there and make the plays. And seeing the way that they swarmed the football, seeing how they use different formations and different schemes so efficiently has been really, really impressive. From a traditional 4-2-5, then quickly switching into a 3-3-5, or even mixing in the inverse, which you never see, of like a 2-4-5 sometimes mixed in there, or 3 safeties in the red zone. There's so many different schemes that Auburn has used so far this year to keep teams on their toes, and it's really impressive. And it's impressive that they have the depth to move guys around as much as they need to make those different changes to still be successful. And so that's what's really impressed me on their defensive side. And of course, Keldrick Falk. I mean, my gosh, that dude's a monster, and he's going to give us all kinds of fits. The fact that he can float on the edge, he can stand up in the middle, he can put a hand down in the middle as well and hold his own. He can stand up out wide to put a tight end or a tackle out on an island so you can't double team him. He can drop out in coverage. He can do so many different things. He's going to be a problem for anybody on any Saturday, but especially for us coming up this weekend. And then offensively, something that historically South Alabama struggled with is a mobile quarterback. And Jackson Arnold, I know we didn't show a lot of it last weekend against Ball State, but week 1 against Baylor, what he was able to do by pulling it and going, or even just some design QB power, was really, really strong. I mean, the radio crew, we were all texting during that Baylor game. We're like, uh-oh, he can run pretty darn good. I mean, we knew he could run from Oklahoma, but seeing power QB run the way he was and the way he was doing it so efficiently was really, really impressive. I know the running back room's a little bit banged up for the Tigers, and so they might lean on him a little bit more. We hope that they do have to become a little more one dimensional in that sense. And then of course Cam Coleman. I mean, an absolute freak of nature at wide receiver. Major Applewhite was talking on Monday at his weekly presser about he remembers going to scout something at Central Phoenix City, and Coleman was there, and they said, "How old's that guy over there? He's got to be headed off to a fall camp somewhere, right?" And said, no, he's going into his junior season in high school, and so that's just the guy already had a name before he even made it to Auburn, and now seeing what he's doing in his sophomore season, continuing to grow, continue to be a playmaker. He's going to give, again, anybody fits. And cornerback is probably our weakest position on our defense. We returned 0 starts from our cornerback room from last year. And so those guys are going to be tested. Them and our safeties, Wesley Miller and Ty Goodwill, they'll be tested for sure. And it's definitely impressive what those groups have been doing.
Look, so the team I'm a producer for high school football on the radio in Dothan is Dothan, and Central Phoenix City is in their region. So we knew all about Cam Coleman. Every year during that matchup, coach would be like, we got to, would tell us you got to do something with Cam. Yep. There at Central. So it was like playing an NFL wide receiver while he was still in high school.
Yeah.
And just looking at the numbers right now for South Alabama, the run defense. They've given up 211. Of course, you talk about Auburn's run game. But I also want to throw it at this. The fact that, you talk about South has struggled with running quarterbacks. Do you think it helps them at all that, that Davenport is a mobile quarterback, so they do see a little bit of that in practice could kind of help them a little bit?
A little bit. It helps, too, that we saw this past week with Jake Retzloff at Tulane he's not a conventional mobile quarterback. He's not going to run like Jackson Arnold will, but he was not afraid at all and had the green light to pull it down and run whenever he wanted to. And he did that a couple of times. He burned us. And so I think, for sure, having Bishop as a guy that already runs around a good bit, behind him, Jared Hollins can move some. Zach Pyron is a power QB transfer from Georgia Tech. And so I think for sure that probably helps us out a little bit. Of course, we're going to scheme for it all week long in practice leading up to it too. But I think primarily seeing Retzloff so recently last week as a similar archetype to Jackson Arnold, I think that's definitely going to be helpful.
And for South when they're on offense, look, a couple weeks ago against Baylor, I mean, Sawyer Robertson did it again against SMU, I know, but they did throw for over 400 yards on Auburn. Do you see some potential there where maybe South can maybe pick up some things what Baylor did and in the passing game, especially with Voisin? Like I said, Voisin to me looks like a guy he's going to be playing on Sundays next year. So we'll just watch your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I hope so. The run game is what our offense is predicated on. But again, with the front seven the way it is for Auburn, it's going to be tough for us to find open space. And we had success running the football against Tulane, but it was not in big chunk plays. It was just kind of just perpetual motion over and over and over again. And we'd get 4 here, 5 here, maybe break off an 8-yarder and whatnot. I hope that we can break off something in our passing game. And I think that's probably where you look at it for Auburn, where it's not necessarily a weakness, but they're not as experienced as the front seven where, yes, Lee is a junior and Crawford's a sophomore and he's got playing experience, and Sylvester Smith has played some. I know Champ Anthony's banged up at the safety spot, and Caleb Harris, those are all outside of Champ Anthony are sophomores or younger. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully, the savvy of some of our older guys, like I mentioned, to Devin Voisin, who's played 7 years. We've got a transfer from Samford, Brendan Jenkins, who's the son of former NFL wide receiver Michael Jenkins. He's played a lot of football. He's had success. Hopefully, Jenkins' savvy can help him out a little bit there. But, I think if there's something that we can find, I'm hoping it's going to be in the passing game. And again, we have the weapons to run the football. Kentrell Bullock is an Ole Miss transfer. He's been splitting time at running back the last 2 years. He was kind of running back 1A with Fluff Bothwell, who was 1B, and Fluff is now at Mississippi State. And so Kentrell's the guy at running back. In the last 2 games, he has broken his career high in carries each time. And so, we'll still lean on Bishop to run and Kentrell to run and PJ Martin to mix in there. But I definitely think for sure you'll see some quite a bit of play action, and hopefully some vertical threat from our passing game.
So, after this game for South Alabama, they will be jumping into Sun Belt play. And I wanted to close it up just, we've seen this team, and they got a lot of good pieces on this team, offense and defense, to be successful this season. What do you believe is the ceiling for this football team?
I think it's as high as we want it to be. We've won a bowl game the last 2 years, which is the first time in program history we've won back-to-back bowl games. We've had 3 winning seasons in a row, which we'd never done before either. And keep in mind for your listeners that maybe don't know the history of South Alabama, we only started football in 2009. I know the university's been around since the 60s, but football is still very new here. And so, we're still checking some boxes of some firsts in this program's history. And, I think the next step for us is a conference championship. We haven't made it to a championship game yet. We were so close last year to getting in there. In 22, we had our first 10-win season. We went 10-3 and lost our bowl game. And we were a game out of going to the conference championship game. Last year, we went 6-6 in the regular season, win our bowl game, but in conference play went 5-3. And in all 3 of those losses, we had a fourth quarter lead and couldn't hold on. So we've been very, very close to checking that box and getting into that conference championship game. And I think that's the next step for this program. And I think it's definitely within reach this year. We're still the only conference in the FBS that plays divisions in the Sun Belt. We're in the West. The West is wide open right now because Louisiana came in as the favorites in the West. They've lost their quarterback for the year with an injury. Arkansas State's a very talented roster as well in the West. They've lost their starting running back for the season with an injury. And so the West is wide open right now, I think. And as long as we can stay healthy and just play the brand of football that we saw this past weekend where the guys didn't give up, they kept battling away and took a very good Tulane team down to the wire, I think we've got a great shot of, at the end of the season, potentially putting up a new banner in Hancock Whitney Stadium for potentially a Sun Belt championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, another first coming to Auburn this weekend on Saturday. And JT, I appreciate you coming on, previewing the South Alabama side of the game and just talking about the team overall. But if the listeners or viewers want to check it out, where can they find you? And hey, if anybody just wanted to flip over one of your games this year and listen to the broadcast, where can they find that?
Sure. Yeah. So easiest way is usajaguars.com/radio has all of our radio network listings on the Jags radio network and whatnot. If you search on the free iHeartRadio app, just Jags, just JAGS, we'll pop up first thing. We're on a couple of stations for football. We'll have 2 hours of pregame coverage. We'll be up bright and early over at Jordan-Hare Stadium this weekend, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Appreciate it, JT, and hope we can do this again sometime.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.